Hello, everyone. It's Aliyah with Daley Conversations, and I'm here with a special guest, Alex Owens. And I love to get to know our special guest, and so I'm going to ask Alex to tell us something interesting about himself, introduce who he is, and what you do.
Something interesting about myself
Yes,
and what I do.
who you are and what you do. Yes.
Well, first I'm gonna start with what's interesting about myself. I'm having a baby next week, so that's awesome.
Oh my
Yeah,
God,
big news.
congratulations!
Bop, 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 bop. Yeah,
Yes.
so that's
Is it a
going
boy or
down.
a girl?
It's a boy.
Okay.
It's gonna be my second child, but it's been 6 years, so
Wow.
I'm a little terrified. But we're here. Who am I and what do I do? My name is Alex Owens. I'm co-founder of an organization called Be Loud Studios here in New Orleans. Our mission is to amplify kid confidence through radio production. And so we are a youth-led radio station here in New Orleans. And we have a ton of programming where we pass the mic to youth, to educators, so that only their story is being told, but is being heard.
I think that's so dope. Youth podcasting is a beautiful thing, especially when when you know as an educator that children need to have a voice and need to share their voice. And so I want you to talk a little bit more about how you got into podcasting and how does podcasting help to build confidence and also literacy skills.
Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think too, like I rarely use the word podcast. I don't know if that's something we talked about. We're starting to use it more, but I think it's like we never started being like, yo, we wanna create a youth podcast or like we love podcasts. Let's do podcasts with kids. And we've never used radio because I sometimes I don't think the word podcast resonates with kids. It's starting to more, but when we started, it was like kids are like, we don't listen to podcasts, right? Especially the youth that we were working with. Um, so we use the word radio because I think there's like nostalgia there, but I think there's like gatekeepers to radio, right? Like, how do you get on the radio? Kids know how to like get on TikTok and get on even podcasting streams. They know how to use Twitch. They know how to use the internet to talk. But this idea of like, how do I get on that box in my mom's car that I can turn and the whole city's listening to is something they don't know. And so that's why we get into radio. And I think that ties into how we got started. We originally started as a academic intervention in a charter school here in New Orleans. I was running a makerspace. My partner, co-founder, was a writing interventionist. And there's one kid that we usually speak to, a young man who now goes by DJ Gossip, and he was a fourth grader who just didn't want to write. And so we were like, how do we get him moving his pencil? And so we had a microphone in my classroom because we were doing like digital music production, blah, blah, blah. And we said, well, what happens if we start a radio station? And literally the next day he comes running off the bus and he's like, I got it. And he'd written this script and it was all about how to make slime. And it was just like such a beautiful moment as an educator recording with him and feeling like his authentic voice was shining. And so from there, it was like, all right, we got this recording. What do we do with it? Right. And so we just started finding ways to put it out. Because again, it's not enough just to record something, it's about it being heard. And so we put it in newsletters. We started like playing it during assemblies. And then eventually I got like a radio transmitter. I bought one off Amazon. And, you can illegally transmit up to 100 feet. And so I just
Wow.
started like running it during carpool, and kids would knock on the window and be like, yo, turn to 89.3, because that's the station we were kind of taking over. And we just started playing it. And that felt so cool. So from that moment, we just like took off and started calling ourselves a radio station, even if we're not. Like even now, we're not a radio station. Like there's no tower like on this building, but we call ourselves a radio station because that's the identity we want to adopt.
Well, I want to excuse myself because I said kid podcast or youth podcast when really, like you said, and you clarified that it is a youth radio station. I think that's so beautiful. I want to go back to how radio connects with literacy because there's something, a big, huge literacy crisis in the U.S. I don't know if you know about it, but our literacy scores in the U.S. are very, very low. And sometimes it can be hard as an educator to engage children in literacy, especially as they get older. And when you are trying to engage older kids, I definitely think that interest takes a play in everything that we do as educators. And so how did you connect those skills with radio and literacy, and how is it helping to build those skills?
Yeah, I mean, I say everything I'm about to say as just like we don't got to figure it out, right? Like we are emerging in our growth and skills in doing this. But here is like our early assumptions of how it does it is like number one, like you said, it's like engagement, right? Like kids don't want to do worksheets, period. Right. And so it's an authentic platform for them to move a pencil that feels more engaging than just like busy schoolwork, which 99% of kids have to do, especially in the school systems that we're working with. I think the second thing is, even though it's more engaging, it still requires a level of organization and planning and mapping, thoughtfulness. Kids think they can just press record. And it's actually, even the most outgoing kid very rarely can just press record, grip it and rip it and sound like amazing, right? Like there needs to be a level of thought of like, what are your talking points? What are your words? What do you want to say? Because if you just go on and on and on, you're not going to want to listen to that. And so that's where I keep coming back to it being something that people listen to, right? So that it's like, how are you organizing your thoughts so that you know exactly how you're using that time? A tip to that too is everything we have kids do is short. We don't let them just get on a mic and talk for 20 minutes. Our recordings are short. If you can't make something in a minute that someone's going to listen to, I'm not going to let you record for an hour, right? So I think that's like a huge play. I think the last thing that I really like, so you got engagement. We have this idea of like organizing, which I think sometimes is hard for kids, especially younger kids to get into. It's hard to get started. And then the third thing is like no one sees the actual text, right? And so spelling, grammar, all these things that like, yes, are important for literacy, but are often obstacles for kids being like engaged around writing. Sometimes if you remove those and say, no one's going to look at your script, you say it the way you want it. As long as you know what's on the paper and you can read it, great. Then we're going to go for that. And I've seen that be, especially with struggling writers or reluctant writers, the ultimate selling point of being like, don't ask me how to spell, political, right? Just go for it. And as long as you have that voice in your head and it's down on paper and it's organized, we're listening, right?
Which is a totally different structure from school, because it's like, that's what we care about. You got to spell it right. You have to, and it's like this pressure of feeling like you have to perform and you have to like get things right. But it seems like in your space, the space that you're creating, when you work with children or youth, doing radio, that it's not about that. It's about telling the story and getting it out there, no matter if it's perfect or not. And I think that's so beautiful.
Yeah. And it's like, as someone who used to be an English teacher, right? Like if I got a stack of 100 papers that I got to grade in a weekend, man, I can't wait to see that spelling mistake, or I can't wait to see that thing that doesn't look right, because that's just an easy next, right? So it's harder, right? Like, and I know this is something you're interested in too. It's just like kind of like mass education is structured to not allow for individual stories, right? And so for us, it's just like, let's remove some of those things and make sure that like a kid has that connection directly to the story that they're telling, and take out some of those traditional markers of whether it's literate or whether it's quality or whether it's A-worthy or whether it's just simply good or academic,
Yes. So what like impact have you seen with starting a youth radio in children?
I wanted to like pull these pictures off the wall of like, right, I'm a firm believer in like individual stories. So, right, I could talk about our statistics, our impact, but it's just like, I want to give you like two kind of stories that I'm thinking about. Like one is this guy right here, this is DJ EJ, and we have a wall in our kind of office space that has like Polaroids of the kids, right? So that we're reminded of why we do this work. But I've known this kid for a long time, DJ EJ, and he's a quiet kid. He's a shy kid, super smart, super kind, but like is someone who has a lot to say, but maybe is afraid to say it. And when I first met him, he came through our summer camp and like, here's the mic, and was just sort of talking. So, and all week, all I was saying, like, get louder, speak from here, speak from here, speak from here. And it was really hard for him, right? But he kept coming back. And I think that after that week, he felt a sense of accomplishment. And then he joined our Saturday program. And now he's been rocking with us for 4 years. And it's not like his anxiety is gone, right? It's not like he's all of a sudden like singing at the top of his lungs, but he's found a place and he's found a community, he's found friends, he's found mentorship, and now he's pushed us so that we're not forcing every kid to talk on the mic. He is now helping lead the editing and the sound design and doing some of that work that complements our radio show. And it's not because it's like, oh, we have changed this kid to be the future podcaster of the world, but it's like we've given him a place that he can be himself, and we have changed our expectations of what it means to be part of this community so he can fit in, right? That's also true of this young person. This is kind of a crazy picture of them. This is DJ IDK, and I've known this young person for a while, and they, again, maybe would be the first person to say like, oh, I don't like talking on the mic, but it's just wildly gifted visual artist, so smart, so sarcastic. And I think has been allowed to not just flex creative skills, but build a creative confidence, right? That has allowed them to also just be more personally confident. And part of that by giving them a community that says like, you got it, you're great, like keep going. And now just proud of this young person because they go to an art school here in the city for digital media production or digital media arts. And is like, I don't want to say thriving because still has a lot of challenges every day, but like has found kind of a place when school has been hard, has not only found a place and be allowed to be themselves, but now has found a school where they can be themselves and is pursuing some like next level opportunities for them as an artist. So I think both of those are really great examples of how we what impact we're having.
That's so beautiful. I always say that's so beautiful because that's the only way I can describe things. But when you told DJ EJ to be loud, what does that mean to you?
Yeah, it's funny because we make kids define that every day. We have 3 values that we kind of militantly go through in the beginning of the session. And first one is show up and be loud. And then it's like, all right, what does be loud mean to you? So I would never tell kids like, yo, be loud means to do these things, right? Like, I don't like when schools have like values and they're one word, like integrity, courage, justice. That's what we do because it's like, one, those words are not ambiguous, but they are complex and they have multiple definitions. So it's like, that's why I try to make it more action based and then hear from kids like, what does it mean to show up and be loud? And so to us, kind of a working collective definition is being loud means taking chances. It means being brave. It means showing up and being kind to other people. It means being respectful. It means holding space to listen. It means speaking your mind, expressing yourselves. And so I think it means a lot of different things depending on who the kid is. And it's on us as educators and organizers to make space for a lot of different answers. And not just having like, hard work, right? Like on there and having kids go after that. Work hard or whatever it is,
Exactly. So as an educator and a homeschooling parent, one thing that I want to do is share with parents as well, just ways that they can boost education or learning at home. And so can you give advice or tips on how parents can include this as a way for them to include literacy into their homeschooling schedule or curriculum? Because what I find is that parents will go out and buy an English curriculum, a big old English curriculum, and they don't even understand it. But it's the 21st century. A lot of people understand podcasting, radio, or just telling their story. And so how can parents use this how can they use this in their homes as a tool for them to help with learning?
Yeah, I got 3 things for you. First I would say is like, I think it's so useful. I think I would start with like, how are you exposing kids to other forms of literacy, right? And like before you start making podcasts or radio, it's just like build it into what kids are already consuming, right? And have them listen to podcasts. And not all of it has to be like kids story podcasts because there's not many that are great, but it's just like, yo, have the radio on, have them listen to the news, have them listen to like maybe more adult podcasts, have them listen to podcasts around their own interests, right? Like that's the thing about podcasts, which is cool, especially around the internet, is like there's mass media and then there's niche media. So there's a podcast about anything. And even the best podcasts are the most specific they are. Like Dungeons and Dragons, like in Indiana, you know what I mean?
Right,
Like
right.
different things, right? So I think just like listening and exposing kids to different things. We actually don't do enough of that, I think, at Be Loud. But I think it's like, yo, listen to the Be Loud podcast, right? And like have conversations with kids about that. Um, and then I think being like those questions like, well, what if you had a podcast, right? Like, what do you think of that? What was good about it? What was not good about it, right? Like the same way that we would treat a picture book or English curriculum, right? Like, how do you treat listening or, in that reflection? The second thing, I would check Soundtrap out. Like if you're putting this on Facebook, I would link to a tool called Soundtrap. Soundtrap's a really cool tool. When COVID happened and we weren't seeing kids in our school, I moved to Soundtrap and met them on Zoom calls and taught them how to do it virtually so that they could record on their own. So Soundtrap is a really dope tool. It's internet based, and so kids can access it on any type of device that has Wi-Fi. It's sort of like the Google Docs for audio production. So
Wow.
I really,
Yeah,
and
so.
yeah, they got tons of resources. They got courses, they got curriculum, they got lesson plans. Like Soundtrap has been a supporter of ours. We have a teacher fellowship where we pay teachers to create audio content and we give them Soundtrap to do that. Right. So I think check out Soundtrap, soundtrap.com. And then the third thing is this, like, how are you creating opportunities for them to create around, right? So is there some sort of cultural milestone coming up? A thing for us is we work with schools around Black History, Black Futures Month, right? That's what, like, creating like recordings around this or creating recordings around Thanksgiving. Yo, who are you grateful for? Let's actually just like grab our phone and like, let's just record, right? And not even thinking about like, how are we going to put this on the radio, but like, yo, we're going to share this with grandma, right? Like, how do you create specific audiences for kids to record and listen to? So if I was homeschooling kids and the election was coming up, all right, how y'all feeling about the election? Great. I want to send this to our city, our representative, right, to see if he knows what a young person's feeling about that. But there are some like big opportunities too. Another thing that I point to is NPR every year has something called the NPR Student Podcast Challenge, where it's an open call for kids to submit 6 to 8 minute like length podcasts, and it could be on anything. And then there's some resources built in to help organize that. So resources are out there. It's just sort of like filtering and prioritizing and seeing what fits with what you're already doing.
Wow, those are some great resources. Thank you for sharing. I just want to wrap it up by saying that me and Alex and I, we met during a trip that I was going on with Road Trip Nation. It was an entrepreneurial educational road trip, and we started in New Orleans and we ended in New York City, and we got to interview Alex. And I just want to ask you a little bit about the experience. Like, how did you feel being on Road Trip Nation, being documented? I know it's not new to you, but like, how did you feel being called and like, being documented and us meeting you and just that whole experience? I would love for us to talk about that before we go.
Yeah. I don't know. It seems so long ago. First of all, I was just like, yo, I thought meeting you and the other young people was just like, yo, that was my takeaway. Was just like, yo, what beautiful conversation, what beautiful like energy, right? Like I think that's how it is with most work I do, right? It's like, yeah, the product or the output or what it's going to lead to is cool, but it's like, how are you just like chasing good energy? And like that, I think that morning with y'all was like an awesome, it gave me energy, right? Not just because y'all were listening, but because listening to you and listening to your story and what you want to do. And I think that's why we're here today, I've been following Road Trip for a minute. And so I knew about them. And even when I was a history teacher, like way back, I was like, man, I just want to get an RV, right? Like, let's do some real learning, right? Like, we can't do learning in this box. Like, let's get out of here. And so Road Trip was one of like the few people or the few kind of groups that I was like pointing to of like a model of like how I want to. And I think indirectly maybe like has inspired like why I do Be Loud, right? Like, learning can't happen always just in a 4-room classroom, right? And you have to be out, you have to be meeting people, you have to be creating conversations in order to really have not only a cool outlet for what you have to say, but also to like change your mind or to inspire you or to give you new ideas and new life. So obviously, like when I got the call, I was just like, yes, cool, awesome, you know. And then there's also like, and you might feel this way, or it's just like, yo, they want to talk to me. You know what I mean? Like, cool, I guess. You know what I mean? I'm just out here like struggling like everyone else, you know, and like I love the work I'm doing, but in the city of New Orleans, man, I can throw a rock and hit someone else whose story is just as powerful, a program just impactful. So I think they call that imposter syndrome, right? But like there was part of that when I was walking into that space with y'all.
I felt the same way when they called me. I was like, oh my God, y'all really want me to go on a road trip with y'all?
Yeah, that's right.
It was a very profound experience. And I'm so glad that we met. Just to wrap it up, because I know we have to go, can you just give maybe just advice for anyone who is trying to make an impact or doing something different within their lives? Is there any like advice or just tips that you can give to end the conversation?
Yeah. I mean, how much time you got, right? Like, I think again, like it's all grain of salt, right? Like this is just my experience, but I don't know. I saw that road trip book. They sent me a nice book and a nice mug, and I was like, oh, this is fancy. This is what happens when you got real resources a little bit. You know what I mean?
Right.
And part of it is like, and I think we've talked about this, and maybe I said it when we did that interview, but like part of it is yes, picking your destination and planning backwards and designing your life. Right. I know there's a lot of energy in that feeling now, like design, think your life, right? Where do you want to go and plan those roadblocks and do that? And it's like, yeah, cool. I believe that. But I also think it's like, it is also just like doing it, right? Doing it and enjoying that process and not getting frustrated and just like, and finding small ways to iterate and not trying to chase something that's so big that you wouldn't even know what to do with it if you got it, right? And so like I'm thinking about you like doing this, right? It's like the mic's not working, this, that, and the other. It's just like just do it. And like if you did these conversations, if you did 100 more of these conversations between now and 2027, you would be amazing, right? Like you would like I'm sure have like a nice ring light with a nice camera and maybe it's in person and now you got a budget and maybe someone's editing it and producing it. You know what I mean? And so it's like, but you're not going to get there without doing 100 of these. Like, and there's a myth, especially with young people, especially with the internet, that like you can go viral overnight. And that's not true, right? Like, I don't really know much about this guy, but like Mr. Beast, right? That guy makes millions of dollars and has millions of views. Go back to his first videos. They weren't these like produced multimedia. It's him talking directly into a camera about video games, right? Take any content creator or anyone that's good at anything and look at the first time they tried something. It's not good. And so I think the only thing you have to like really pinpoint is not like, how am I going to be X or how much money is that going to include? But it's like, yo, actually, what is that pursuit that I want to invest in? And then how do I do that in small ways? And also, like, how do you not take yourself so seriously doing it, right? And how do you have fun with it? And how do you bring your friends in on it and your kids in on it? And you're just like doing it so that it's like part of your routine and part of what makes you happy. And then you figure out all the other stuff. I didn't have a salary the first year of what I was doing, right? Like this, that, and the other. So you kind of figure out what you're uniquely good at and what you're passionate about. And then all that other stuff eventually like falls in place if it's the right thing. But it's not going to fall in place if you don't have that foundation first. Does that make sense?
That totally makes sense. You know, it does.
For you, it's like, yo, you want to be doing this gardening program. You want to be like cultivating this work, right? You're doing it. Every time you do a Saturday, no matter how bad it feels, that is just another opportunity for you to learn and bank that experience to do the next thing, you know? So right. I believe in that. I believe in you. I think what you're doing is awesome. Keep doing this. You have the energy for it. Like, I want to talk to you. Like, I would love to see you talk to 100 community educators and see how your production and your following like grows by doing it. But it's hard, man. It's not easy, you know?
Yes, I appreciate that.
Yeah.
I want to do this. I want to connect with people and talk, but like you said, also I'm very focused on the gardening program and just building community in general. So wherever it leads me, like you said, I'm just doing like things that I'm interested in doing, and wherever it leads me, it leads me. There's no like attachment to the outcome or anything like that. It's just I just wanted to do.
That's right. That's it. And as I see your little one kind of popping her head in the door and stuff, you know, one thing I've learned too, there's a lot of mistakes that I make as a parent, that we make as a parent, but what an awesome model to our kids too, of being like, yo, I don't have this lane that I'm like only going in, but it's like, I'm also taking risks and failing sometimes and being passionate and being creative. And I want you to see that. And I try to instill that with my child too. And it's just like, yo, it's like, you can't get what you want without working at it. Right. And I also, man, you've really got me in on something. I also think it's like for people maybe where it's like what I want is not like crazy amount of money. It's like to live like a purpose-filled life around creative pursuit and community. Right.
Yes.
So I think it's like living that every day and making that my metrics of success is sometimes like harder to find and harder to define. But is way more joyful and is way more just like it's just something I can invite my family into, which feels dope.
Exactly. I feel that. Listen, I feel that all the way. And I definitely want to instill that in my daughter too. And that's why it's like, you just got to keep going, like you said, and just keep doing so that you are the example to know that everything doesn't come overnight. You know, you gotta like, especially with our generation or, you know, my generation, younger generations, where social media is like the go-to and you just see everybody and everything just doing so well on social media. We definitely have to reel it back in and instill in children that it takes hard work. It takes practice. It takes time and patience with yourself and to give yourself time to grow. So yeah, I appreciate, you know, you saying that and having this conversation with you today.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. Always, 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 you know?
Yes.
Same.
Thank you so much, Alex, for joining me today. That is all. Peace.
Yeah. Peace. Appreciate you.